Hello.
How are you?
Tired.
From what?
Existence.
It's exhausting.
Yes, it is. Especially in this economy.
Yes. Well, did you have a good day?
Oh, it was fine. I mostly crocheted all day.
So you just had crochet club all day?
Yeah. Trying to finish ducks, but I finished one duck. I have 4 now. I want 5, but I really don't want to crochet another duck.
Come on, you just do like the same rows over and over and over.
Exactly.
It's the funnest ever.
It's so boring.
I think it would be funner if you didn't have to look at it while you're doing it.
Right? Or try to keep count.
Mm-hmm. Like if you could just do it. Like that kid that's the crochet prodigy.
And he just goes and goes. He can carry on a conversation looking at you while crocheting, and it's just
Yeah. Have you seen the one girl who has the weird glasses where she's looking forward, but they're magnified, so it's she sees in her lap, but she's looking forward, and
I don't know that I've seen her, but I've seen those glasses before.
Yeah. So that's how it's her setting up to crochet, and so she puts the thing with her ball of yarn on it in her Crocs. So that it spins, and then she puts those things on and a lamp, and then I don't know if maybe it's so that she can watch TV, but she can also see what she's doing as it reflects. I don't know either. She looks so silly, but whatever works. Man. I think that's why I started, because I used to hate listening to audiobooks because it was I couldn't pay attention to them, but I think when my ADHD started getting so bad and I couldn't focus on one thing because I wanted to be doing 30 things, I was okay, well, how could I read and cross stitch at the same time? And so I just started listening to audiobooks.
I think that's kind of the purpose of them, but
yeah. But it's also started being helpful commuting, listening to, and I don't know. They're not so bad these days. I think I can listen to them a little easier now. Sometimes, sorry, sleepy. Sometimes I catch myself drifting off and being I have no idea what just happened. I have to rewind it, but at least I can rewind it. Well, you want to hear a story?
You gonna tell us a terrible story?
A terrible story. Okay, so I wouldn't normally give a trigger warning because we're branded as a true crime mystery podcast, and if you're going to listen to a true crime podcast, you know you're going to hear terrible things. But since our show is also aired on the radio sometimes, I figure maybe for people who don't necessarily know better should know that this story will involve murder. It will involve rape, and it's gory.
Fantastic.
So much fun. Okay, so Bethesda, Maryland. It's an affluent suburb of Washington, D.C. Their median household income is almost $200,000. It's also one of the most educated areas of the country. 98% of the population has at least a high school diploma. 87% of the population 25 years and older have at least a bachelor's degree, and 57% has a postgraduate degree. So,
bunch of smarty pants.
Bunch of smarty pantses who live there. So, in 1994, Cooper Carey with the Federal Realty Investment Trust had this idea to create a large walkable urban area. And he started buying a property that's now known as Bethesda Row. And it has brick walkways and lights strung across the street and outside seating for restaurants and upscale shops and apartments and pavilions, and it's a hip happening place.
Yeah.
So that's where we are on the spring morning of March 12th, 2011. So Rachel Orletti arrives at the Lululemon store she manages on Bethesda Road just before 8 a.m. The iPad 2 had just been released the night before, and there was already a line queuing up outside the store next door for people who hadn't been there the day before or didn't get their iPad the day before.
Okay.
So Rachel finds the door to the store unlocked, which is weird because Jayna Murray, the woman who closed the night before, is pretty responsible, and this isn't really like her. But rather than being worried, Rachel's just kind of annoyed. Like, I can't believe she forgot to lock the door.
Right. Just an inconvenience instead of...
Right. And is like, oh, well, I'll have to talk to her about this later because, she should have locked up. She walks into the store, but right away she realizes something's wrong. The store is a disaster. Displays are knocked over. There's like a flat screen TV that's crashed over. There's like merchandise strewn everywhere, and the cash register's open. But the farther she goes into the store, she starts seeing blood, and she hears someone moaning, and she runs outside to call 911. And she tells the operator that she's the general manager of the Lululemon store, and it looks like somebody vandalized the store, and that she thinks that someone is hurt inside, and she's afraid to go inside. Which is smart, because, like,
right.
You never know if there's, like, a bad guy still in there. Like, when you come home, if your front door's open, don't go in there.
Right.
You call the cops. So, a man who was waiting in line for the iPad comes over, and he asks if he can help. And he goes inside and he walks to the back. He's like, you can see all this blood in like the hallway, and he's following it to the back. And he gets to this doorway and he tries to push it open, and it's blocked by something. He kind of forces it open a little bit, and he sees that there's a very bloody body lying in the floor, blocking the door. And so he turns tail. Let me get out of the store.
Yeah.
But then he also hears the person moaning, and he finds another woman tied up and bloody in the bathroom. And this woman's alive because she's moaning, but like semi-conscious. Like,
okay.
She's not responding or anything. So he runs back outside. Rachel lets the 911 operator know that it appears that one person is dead in the building and another one is hurt, and she needs an ambulance. So the police get to the store super quick, and they find 28-year-old Brittany Norwood in the bathroom with zip ties binding her wrists and ankles, and she has cuts all over her. Her head and her face are bloody, and they rush her to the hospital.
Yikes.
Yeah. Very scary. The other person was 30-year-old Jayna Murray, and Jayna was unfortunately dead. She was found in the back hallway, face down in a pool of blood, and appeared to have a ligature around her neck. So Brittany is like a tiny thing. She's like 5'2". And at the time that this happened, she weighed about 120 pounds, but she was super athletic. And she aspired to be a personal trainer. She worked out all the time in her spare time. Working at Lululemon, I guess they give them like passes to local fitness stores because...
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like, on one hand, they want you to be fit because they want you wearing the clothes, but they also want you wearing the clothes to the fitness places as, like, grassroots marketing kind of a
sort
thing.
Of a advertisement.
Exactly. So, Brittany had just started working at the Lululemon on Bethesda Row about 3 months before this happened, and she had been transferred from the store in Georgetown. So she was still pretty new here. Detective Dina Mackey was charged with going to the hospital and speaking with Brittany about what had happened in the store. Brittany spoke to her for about 45 minutes and told a very scary story. So Brittany stated that she and Jayna had been the only employees in the store that Friday night. Jayna wasn't even supposed to be working that night, but she had traded with somebody else who wanted to go out of town, and it ended up just being the two of them working. They closed the store at 9 o'clock. They did all of the closing things. They counted the money. They cleaned up. They restocked. They left about 9.
The typical things.
Yep. They left about 9:45. Jayna had driven to work, so she walked off in the direction of her car. Brittany headed towards the metro station, but when she got to the station, she realized that she had forgotten her wallet at work, and it had her metro card in it. So she called one of the other employees from the store because she didn't have Jayna's number, and Jayna was the one with the keys because she was like the senior crew member or whatever that night.
Right.
And so she got the phone number, she called Jayna and asked, hey, can you come back and let me in? I forgot my wallet. And Jayna says, that's fine, because I also just realized that I forgot my laptop there, so I'll meet you back there in a few minutes. And Jayna pulls up. Brittany was sitting on like the bench in front of the store. Jayna pulls up and parks in the loading zone in front of the store. Like, puts her hazard lights on, and you're not supposed to park there, but they were just running in. So they go in. They look for Brittany's wallet for like 10 minutes, and they can't find it. And Jayna finally just says, hey, take my Metro card because I drove. We'll look for your wallet tomorrow. So as they're walking back to the front of the store, Brittany says that a man jumps out and hits Jayna in the head because when they came in the store, they disarmed the alarm, but they didn't arm it behind them after they came over. They didn't lock the door behind them, I guess, rather. Not arming the alarm, but they didn't lock the door back while they were inside.
Which should be okay, but...
It should be. Especially because this is a busy street. And it's like, not even, like, it's about 10 o'clock at night. It's Friday night. There's still people walking around. Businesses are still open. Restaurants are still open. So, like, it doesn't feel unsafe. Like, you just go, you're just running in. You're grabbing your wallet. It's not just you,
like, in a creepy, deserted place.
Right. It's not like, everything's closed and it's dark and whatever. So, so the man was hiding in there. After, I guess he came in after they had, like, walked to the back. He jumps out, he hits Jayna in the head, and then there were two men, and the other one jumped out, and he hit Brittany in the head, grabbed her by the hair, and told her that if she screamed, he'd slit her throat. And she said that they were both dressed in black, and they had ski masks on. And she said that the guy had, like, dragged Jayna to the back. She was yelling, she was fighting, but that, she could hear the yells eventually starting to, like, die away. And then she didn't hear anything after that. At the same time, the other man is asking Brittany where the money was, making her open the safe. He drug her to the back of the store where he beat her up. He cut her all over her body. He hit her repeatedly about the head, all while calling her, like, vile, racist, misogynistic names.
Fantastic.
Yeah, just wonderful. So she said that he eventually cut the crotch of her pants open and that he raped her repeatedly, including using a wooden clothes hanger. So bad. Yeah. So at some point, the men drug Brittany into the room where Jayna lay dead and threw her on top of Jayna. And she, she's crying while she's telling the cops this, just remembering how much blood that there was when this happened. Eventually, the men zip-tied her hands and her ankles together and left her in the bathroom where she eventually blacked out. They left the store. And, Brittany's just, like, blaming herself because she's like, if I hadn't left my wallet behind, we never would have gone back there. This never would have happened.
There's always that sense of survivor's guilt.
Yeah. And, the cops telling her, this is not your fault. This shouldn't have happened. You can't blame yourself for this happening. So when asked to describe the men, she said that one was over 6 feet tall. The other one was short, like maybe 5'3". She said he was barely taller than she was. They were both a medium build. When asked their race, she said that their clothing, their ski masks were covering their skin. It was dark in the store, but based on their voices, she guessed that they were white and they were probably in their 20s. So the police start looking for two men fitting the description in the area. They find that the Apple store next door has a security camera in the alley, and they see that the night of the attack and about the time, that these guys would have been leaving, there's two men walking down the alley behind the stores that look like they're coming from the direction of Lululemon. One's tall, one's shorter. They're both in black. So they're like, these have to be
obviously
the guys, right?
Surely those are the guys.
Yeah. So they start, like, putting out, like, videos. Have you seen these guys? Do you know who these guys are? They're still looking for these guys. So meanwhile, Dr. Mary Ripple, a forensic pathologist, starts working on Jayna's autopsy. Jayna had 331 separately identifiable wounds on her body.
That's repulsive,
Yeah. So this is actually said to be a conservative number because some of the wounds overlap, so they were impossible to count. Of these wounds, 232 were blunt force injuries and 99 were sharp force injuries. More than 100 wounds were to her head alone. 39 of those on her head were to her face, which was said to be, quote, defiled like a jack-o'-lantern. Jayna's skull was broken in 8 places. Her neck and chin were bruised by a rough rope. 105 of Jayna's wounds were classified as defensive. Those were the ones on her hands and her forearms from where she's, like, trying to fend off her attacker. There were at least 5 weapons used, but as many as 10, including a hammer, a wrench, a straight-edged box cutter, a wheeled box cutter, a metal peg used to hold up mannequins, a steel rod for hanging clothes, a razor, a rope, and a long serrated knife.
That just sounds like, for the lack of a better way of putting it, somebody having a good time doing this.
Yeah, no kidding, right? Because
if you're just in it to kill somebody or just in it to, get some witnesses out of the way because you were planning on robbing the store or whatever, you don't need 75 different kinds of weapons.
Exactly. And all of the weapons appeared to be items that were already found in the store, meaning that the killers didn't even bring the weapons with them. Yeah. They were just finding things in the store. And having to stop between weapons. Yeah. Like, first I'm using this, right back, and then I'm going to go find something else. And, and so it's like, horribly, Jayna lived through all of this.
Yeah.
So it says...
That's terrible.
Yeah. The first 330 wounds all showed bleeding and bruising, which only happens when a person's heart is beating. So the final blow was when the serrated knife was thrust into her brain, which was what finally killed her. So she lived through all of that.
That's so sad.
It really is. So during the trial, the judge said that he went home one night and he banged his fist on the table 331 times and said that it took him 8 minutes. The prosecutor gave a conservative estimate of about 3 seconds per blow, meaning the attack lasted about 16 minutes. But because the killer was moving around and looking for new weapons to use, it was likely to have lasted much longer than that.
Yeah. There would have been pauses in between, and who knows if he was savoring.
Exactly.
And generally, if you're savoring, you take your time and...
Mm-hmm. So the autopsy report was so, detailed because there was so much that was going on there that it was 26 single-spaced pages detailing all of the damage that was done to Jayna's poor body. So Jayna was raised in Houston, Texas. She had 2 older brothers. Her father was special operations in the Vietnam War. As a child, she would attend Boy Scout activities and campouts with her brother's troop. I saw a story in one of the books that I read that said that she was doing all of the same things that the Boy Scouts were doing, but because she wasn't a Boy Scout, she couldn't officially earn the badges. And so when she would get home, her dad would give her the badges and be like, "You earned them, you can have them." She did gymnastics. She followed her brothers on a 150-mile bicycle ride benefit for the National Multiple Sclerosis Society when she was 11.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I was going to say I couldn't do that now, but obviously an 11-year-old is in much better shape than I'm in now.
I might have been able to do it at 11.
Maybe.
I might have whined a little bit, though. She played football with the neighborhood boys. She was recruited to throw discus and shot put in high school, where she set records for doing those things. She was said to be a natural dancer. She took classes with dreams of dancing on Broadway someday. I didn't write this down, but there was a story in one of the books that her dad would take her to dance class in I don't know if it was in Houston or if they were somewhere else, but it was somewhere where he was having to sit in the car for 3 hours or something while she went to dance class. And that she was like, "Why don't you ever come in?" And he was just like, "Oh, I don't know. I don't know." And she realized that he was uncomfortable because her teacher was gay. And that she was just like, he doesn't want to go out with you. You can come inside.
He's not interested. Gay men aren't interested in everybody.
And so, her dad started going in and, sitting inside the studio while she was doing dance classes. Let's see. So she wanted to be a Broadway dancer, and she did, clinics for dancing in New York and Los Angeles and Atlanta and all over the place because this was really her dream to do this. But an older dancer kind of told her how hard life is as a Broadway dancer. And she was just like, maybe that's not a life for me. And she was always kind of strong-willed, but, like a happy person. And so when she was, like, done with high school, she had decided she wasn't going to be a dancer anymore. She didn't really know what she wanted to do. She kind of, like, hemmed and hawed and, like, wasn't really doing anything.
Right.
And her parents finally gave her an ultimatum. She either had to enroll in college, she had to get a full-time job, or she had to move out. Because they were, like, they weren't mean parents, but they were like, this is the only way we can get her to make a decision. Mm-hmm. Like, she's got to do something. So she enrolled in St. Louis University, partly because it was close to, like, a major airport, but also because they had a study abroad program. And so she started at St. Louis University studying in Madrid, Spain, and she studied there for 2 years. Then she did a semester SC program where she studied on a converted cruise ship that traveled all over the place. I didn't even know that was a thing.
No, I've never heard of that before.
She finished her bachelor's degree at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. Her major was in international business and marketing. She went back to Houston and settled into a job working in marketing for Halliburton. But the oil and gas industry isn't super exciting. And so Jayna wanted to focus on marketing for, like, a big company, like somebody whose, like, branding is, like, major, like right. Nike or something like that. And so she decided to go get her master's degree. And she applied for the MBA program at Johns Hopkins University around Washington, D.C. She was pursuing 2 master's degrees, one in business administration with an emphasis in marketing and the other in communication. And she really wanted to work in marketing. Like, this was, like, her thing. That's what she thought she would be good at. And while she was living in Washington, D.C., going to Johns Hopkins, she went out to lunch with a friend, and the friend had this red bag that she was carrying, like, her lunch in or whatever. And she was like, what is that bag? And her friend said, it's from Lululemon. And so Jayna was reading it, and I guess I've never been in a Lululemon. No. But I guess they're, like, big on, like, motivational sayings and stuff. Uh-huh. And so this bag is, like, an iconic bag, and it's got all of these sayings on it. And Jayna, like, became really intrigued about this brand because she's in branding. She's in marketing. She's like, is
interested in the branding.
Right. So she's like, this is really cool. And so she went to work at the local Lululemon on Bethesda Road because, one, she needed a job.
Right.
And 2, like, she's really interested in the company. And so she actually ended up writing her senior thesis on the company. And kind of at the same time that all of this is happening, her longtime boyfriend left to go to school in Seattle. And she had planned that after she graduated, she was going to move to Seattle and live with him, and hoped that she would get a job working in marketing in the Lululemon corporate offices in Vancouver. She was said to be fun and funny. She would get her friends to do silly things like moon her neighbor's security camera.
That's fun.
Yeah. And then it said, after that, it said something like, and then celebrate with cartwheels or something. It was like, we did a funny thing. Another story I had read, when she went to the semester, like, started school in Madrid, and, like, the other kids from America who were also in this program and studying there, and they were, like, their first, like, night or week or whatever there, they were all feeling homesick and stuff. And I guess she was really good at throwing her voice. And so she, like, threw her voice to, like, make it sound like there was somebody trapped in the closet, and was, like, making everybody laugh and, like, just trying to, like, make everybody feel better.
Yeah.
And so
she enjoyed fun.
Right. She so much so that she went, like, bungee jumping for her 30th birthday.
Not for me, thanks.
That's not my fun. She was tall and blonde and athletic. She, and literally every person that was interviewed referred to her as, she's my best friend.
Yes.
So she had so many best friends. Jayna's my best friend because she was just that kind of person. Back in the investigation, most of the physical evidence had been taken out of the store. There were bloody shoe prints all over the floor. There were two distinct kinds of shoes. One was kind of a rather large tennis shoe, and then a smaller shoe, which matched Brittany's description of the two men who attacked them, because one was
big man, little man.
Big man, little man. But then they found some weird things. So one of the things was that the bloody shoe prints didn't leave the store. So, like, out on the sidewalk, there were no bloody footprints.
Okay.
They stopped at the front door, or they stopped, or the back door, or whichever door, but they stopped. They didn't go outside.
That's odd.
So, did the killers take their shoes off before they left the store?
Right.
Which, I mean, I guess is possible if they were, like, you know, trying not to, like...
leave a trail.
Yeah, I guess. Then one... So... a table had been pushed up against the wall, and it's like I don't remember what they called it, but it's like one of the tables that they use to like fold the clothes on. Mm-hmm. And there's a shelf underneath it, and they found two pairs of shoes on the shelf. And one of them was a men's size 14 Reebok, so giant shoe. Mm-hmm. And the other one was a woman's pair of New Balance, and neither one of them had shoelaces in them. And it was weird because the store didn't sell shoes. Mm-hmm. And so they were like, why are these shoes in the store? They don't sell shoes. And the shoes didn't have blood on them. So they were just like, this is weird. The shoe prints on the size 14 matched the large shoe prints they found in the store. And on one of the interviews that the detectives had with Brittany, they asked her about the shoes, and she said that they were kept in the store for alterations. And did you know that yoga stores did alterations?
Did shoe alterations?
No, but like you put the shoes on to do the alterations on your exercise pants.
Okay, that makes sense.
But like I didn't even like think of a world where you did alterations on yoga pants.
Yeah.
Or exercise pants at all. But I mean, I guess if you are going to pay like $100 for yoga pants, you would want them to be the correct size. I don't know. But
I guess so.
Yeah.
You want them to be custom fit.
Yeah. They had also found some like a scrub brush and some like Windex and stuff at the back sink. So it was possible that these shoes had been cleaned and then put back on the shelf. So on the same trip to Brittany's house, the detectives that were assigned to the case were Detective Drury and Detective, I don't think that's his name. I think my autocorrect corrected it. Reuven. Mine says Rufus. It's Reuven.
Yeah.
Who were...
Gotta love autocorrect.
Yeah, no kidding. So these two men, Drury was an older detective. He had been on the force for like 30 years. Detective Reuven was pretty new, but they worked well together. And they had worked on other cases together. So they were assigned to this one. And... they had gone to Brittany's house to talk to her about, you know, like interview her some more. And her brother Chris was like, hey, I'll walk out with you. And so they're walking out to the car, and Chris tells the detectives, I'm happy that my sister's alive, but I just can't get over the fact that, like, why would they spare her? This girl was killed, and my sister only has a few injuries. And so the
Which is suspicious.
Right. So the detectives ask Chris if he thinks that Brittany had something to do with it. He says no. But then he also throws in that his sister's really secretive, and had even told them a story about a time when she was 7 and her dad ran out of gas when he was taking her to her soccer game. And he told her, like, stay in the car. I'm just going to run right there to the gas station. And he came back and she was gone. She had hitchhiked home. And she was 7. Yeah. And so...
I mean, I know kids do weird things that they can't quite process the right or wrongness of them.
Yeah. But, like, that was kind of like his closing. Okay, this happened, and then he went back inside.
Yeah.
And so the detectives start wondering maybe Brittany had something to do with it. But they don't think that she killed Jayna. Mm-hmm. They think maybe she staged, like, a robbery that got out of hand. Like, she knew who the guys were or whatever. Mm-hmm. Because there were other things that weren't really adding up from her story.
All right.
So the first thing is that her injuries weren't really that severe. They were all superficial. They all appeared to be self-inflicted. And so they said one of the men on the force that had been a cop for tens of years was like, you can always kind of tell because like the cuts will be really shallow. They'll be really super straight. The only like a major injury that she had was that she had a cut like on the webbing between her thumb and her forefinger that was really deep and had to have stitches. Oh. And they said that they see that a lot when people like cut themselves with knives. But she also had some cuts on her back. And, you know, some of the cops were like, yeah, but she's got cuts on her back. How's she going to do that? And so this cop was like, well, like, if you go like this, and was kind of showing them how, she potentially could have reached herself and done it herself. Her rape exam didn't show any signs of trauma. And you would think that there would be if she had been attacked with a wooden hanger.
Right.
So there was, like, no trauma at all. And her hands were zip tied in front of her, and like then her arms were like up like this, like where she could have lowered her hands and crawled to the store, like crawled out of the store for help, but she didn't. The blood tracks on her body also weren't consistent with having been laying down on the floor bleeding all night.
Right.
They were like straight down her face rather than like to the side, like if you were laying down.
Yeah. That's not going to happen if you're laying down.
Right. And then she had the cut on her forehead, but, you know, some of the cops were like, well, I guess, like, if she had been killing Jayna, like, when she, like, reached back, she could have hit herself or something. So, another thing is that the Apple store next door was closed by the time the attack happened, but there were still employees in the store. And a woman who was working said that she heard a commotion from through the wall, and she called over to another employee to come listen. She said it sounded like something heavy being knocked over and dragged, and she also heard two women. One of them was saying something like, "Oh God, please help me, please stop, please help me." And the other voice was saying, "Just talk to me, don't do this, just talk to me." She was like, "I don't know, like, should I call the cops?" And the other employee was like, "It just sounds like drama." And then they just went back to what they were doing.
Not quite drama.
Not quite drama.
I mean, drama, but...
Yeah. And, like, you can't blame them, but, like, if they had called the cops, like, maybe...
Even if it was a false alarm, like...
And I think it kind of is, like, just reminiscent of... What's the murder? Kitty... Is it Genevieve's? The bystander phenomenon thing where, like, I mean, I think it's pretty much been debunked now as, like, bad reporting, but there were, like, 32 people who watched this woman being murdered, and nobody called the cops because everybody assumed that somebody else would called the cops. And so, it's like, I know you don't want to get involved in somebody else's, like, drama, especially if you think that they're just having, like, some kind of workplace argument or whatever, but, like you said, even if it's a false alarm, at least it's checked on and not just left.
It's better to be vigilant than to be, like, complacent.
And, like, then you have to live with this for the rest of your life. If I had just called
the cops, then... But again, survivor's guilt. It's not technically their fault.
It's not their fault, no. But during all of this, they didn't hear any men's voices. They only heard two women's voices.
Right, and you would think that...
If there was a man yelling obscenities, you would at least hear a man's voice. So then, remember the men that were on the security camera footage? They found them. They turned out to be dishwashers that had been working in a restaurant down the street, and they had just gotten off, and they were just walking down the alley to go home. So, then the shoes that they found in the store. So, the women's shoes were Britney's shoes.
Okay.
So, the only shoe prints in the store then were the really large Reebok shoes that were from in the store and Brittany's shoe print. So there wasn't a pair of shoes from like the third masked man or the second masked man.
The small man.
Yeah. So then the detectives found Jayna's car because remember when they got there, she parked in the loading zone. But when the cops showed up the next morning, her car was not there.
Right.
So they found it a couple of blocks away in a parking lot. And when they like inspected it with like the CSI people, they found a couple of spots of blood in the car, plus a black Lululemon baseball cap with blood under the rim of the hat. And they called Brittany and asked if they could talk to her again, and she came into the station, like kind of under the pretense of, you know, we need to take your prints and we need to take your DNA so that we can like
exclude you.
Yeah, exclude you so we can see whose blood and whose prints or whatever or whose. So while they have her there, they kind of like are small talking her, right? And so they're talking about like, you know, well, we know that Jayna like drove there to work and you were going to the metro station. Do you happen to know what kind of car she drove? And she said that she kind of remembered seeing it once, but she, you know, couldn't remember what the make or model was. And that she had never been in it, that Jayna had never given her a ride anywhere or anything. So the next day, her sister calls the police and says, hey, Brittany remembers some information. She wants to come in and talk to you again. And they're like, okay, yeah, of course. So she goes to the station and she tells them the story that the bad guys made her move Jayna's car. And so that they told her that she needed to move it from the front of the store. But if she ran away or if she flagged down a cop or if she talked to anyone, they would kill her and that someone would be watching her the whole time.
And then she came back and got assaulted and tied up?
Yeah. So they gave her the black baseball cap, told her to put it on, I guess, to hide the blood on her face or whatever.
To obscure her face as well, I'm sure.
Yeah. And sent her to move the car. And that's how her blood ended up in Jayna's car.
Okay.
And they're like, but why didn't you run away? Like, they sent you alone to do this. Why didn't you run away? And she even admits, like, I saw a cop pass me. And they're like, why didn't you flag the cop down?
Right.
And she said, well, because they told me they were going to find me and kill me. And this, but how would they find you?
Yeah.
And she said, well, when they were, like, in the store, they went through my purse and my Comcast bill was in there, so they know my address.
Okay.
And, like, to each other, not to her, they're just like, why would these bad guys stop the attack to look through her bag and look at her bills and find her address? Like, that just doesn't make any sense. And it's like she finds holes, and so she's, like, trying to find ways to fill them in. So then after, like, the physical evidence is taken out of the store, the shoe print expert goes in and to start looking at the prints. And he finds that in every single... So I can't imagine what the store looked like. It said that he had, like, one color tape for the Reeboks and one color tape for the New Balances. And he was, like, trying to figure out the direction. And so he was, like, laying stuff down. And so it probably looked crazy in there. But he said that in every single instance where the shoes overlapped, it was always Brittany's shoe first and then the Reebok shoe on top of it.
Okay.
He was also finding this weird, like, scallop pattern around the shoes. But then he was also finding the scallop pattern by itself without the shoes. And he couldn't figure out what it was.
Okay. And
so he starts talking to one of the other, like, CSIs or whatever. And she tells him, maybe it's shoelaces. Like, slapping the ground. Like, that they have blood on them, they're untied, and they're, like, hitting the ground.
Okay.
So he gets some of his old shoes, like, saturates them in, like, sheep blood or something that they use for...
like recreation purposes.
And puts some paper down and unties his shoes and walks, and that's what it is. And so he figures that the ones that are with shoe prints or when the shoes were bloody and they're walking around and, you know, creating the footprints. But the ones that are without shoe prints, that whoever cleaned the shoes off maybe didn't realize that there was still like diluted blood on the shoelaces. And so the soles of the shoes weren't leaving bloody shoe prints anymore, but the shoelaces were still slapping the floor. And so there was that part of it, like, you know, that this had happened. Somebody had enough like foresight to clean the shoes but still walk around. So then they also learned some background information about Brittany. So Brittany had grown up outside of Seattle. She was one of 9 kids. Her father ran a small upholstery business, and they weren't like well off, but they were well cared for. And they seemed to have a good family.
They had enough money.
Exactly. They seemed to have a good family dynamic. The brothers and sisters all got along and supported each other. Brittany was a high school soccer star. She was recruited by several colleges to play soccer. She finally decided on Stony Brook University in Long Island, New York, and she received a scholarship to play. She was super competitive. A coach had even made a statement, "Brittany hates to lose even more than she loves to win." So,
not necessarily the greatest personality type.
No. Okay. So, she had gotten kind of a reputation for being a kleptomaniac. So even in high school and then into college, people that were around her noticed that things would go missing. And it wasn't like large things, like you'd miss like a couple of bucks out of your wallet or, you know, something like that. And that they were like, you know, Brittany's super fun, but watch your stuff when you're around her.
She just had to take something.
Yeah. But it came to a head when she was in college, and she ended up losing her scholarship and being kicked out of school because she was kicked off of the team.
Yeah.
And she never told her friends that this happened. I don't even know if she told her family that this happened. She told people that she graduated.
Yeah. Didn't want people to know her secret shame.
Yep. And after she left school, she moved to Washington, D.C. Some of her siblings had relocated to the area. And, like, her siblings were well educated. There's engineers and doctors. And, you know, they're all, like, seem to be well adjusted, you know, people.
Yeah.
So she got a job at an upscale hotel near the White House, where she started at the front desk, and she was soon promoted to being in charge of VIP guests because she was just like a natural salesperson, and she was good with people. People said she had like endless patience, that, you know, like you could like tell somebody walking in the door would be like angry or was gonna, and that she would just be like, "It's okay, I've got it." And she would go talk to them and she would diffuse it, and she was very good at that.
I have too short of a fuse.
Right. I just want to cry. It just makes me cry.
Yeah.
Please
that
don't
too.
do that. So her friends always like felt like she was really super selfless. She would always check in on them. She was always making sure they were having a good day, that, you know, that they had everything that they needed. Sorry, I know how much you hate that sound. So she really wanted to be a personal trainer. And so she went to work for the Georgetown Lululemon, thinking that she could make some contacts through the job there.
Okay.
Because, I mean, it's a workout store.
Yeah.
Workout people are going to go in the workout store. But things kind of went sour there because, so Lululemon, I guess, already gives their employees like a pretty good discount on stuff.
Okay.
But at Christmas, they allow the employees to shop with even deeper discounts. And so, but they give them a cap. Like you can come in tonight, you can do like your Christmas shopping or whatever. You can get like, I'm just throwing a number out there, I don't know what it is, like 75% off or whatever. Right. But you can't spend more than $1,000 because they don't want people just like cleaning out the store. Brittany went well over like $2,000. And she claimed that she had asked a supervisor and that the supervisor told her it was okay. But the supervisor claimed that Brittany asked, like, can I go a little over? Right. Not realizing that she was, like, going to more than double it.
Right. Couching the truth and...
Yeah. And so she was fired for abusing the discount, basically. And she didn't sue them, but I don't know if she was, like, threatening to sue them and disputing it, saying, hey, everyone goes over the limit. You're just picking on me. And so I don't know if Lululemon was just, like, to avoid being sued, they hired her back, but said, well, you know, here's some different stores you can work at.
Yeah.
And she picked the Bethesda store. But at the Bethesda store, her coworker started noticing things going missing. So
there goes that kleptomania again.
Yep. So one girl had shown Brittany a bottle of expensive perfume that she had just bought, and the next day she couldn't find it. And she called Brittany and she was like, hey, remember my bottle of perfume that I showed you yesterday? Did I leave it at the store? Because I can't find it anywhere. And Brittany was like, I don't know. I haven't seen it. But that, like, somebody thought that they saw it in her bag on another day. Another time.
Maybe don't carry the evidence around with you.
Right. Another day, another coworker noticed that, like, $10 was missing out of her purse. She was like, I know I had a 10 and a 5. The 10 is gone.
Mm-hmm.
There were a couple of other instances like that. And the manager realized that Brittany was working each time that something went missing. And so they were kind of just looking for an excuse to fire her, but because, like, they couldn't prove that she was doing it. And so they were just
have
like,
any evidence one way or the other.
You know, let's just wait and see if we can catch her doing something. So at the same time, she had applied for a personal training position at an upscale fitness club in the neighborhood. And she had already gone to one interview. Apparently it went really well. She was invited back for another one in the coming days. But the day that Jayna and Brittany worked together, a final instance of stealing occurred where she finally got caught. And so Lululemon, and I guess other retailers do the same thing, have a policy that workers have to check each other's bags at the end of the night to make sure that people are stealing things.
I mean, I don't like that, but
no,
I understand.
Right. And so when Jayna checked Brittany's bag that night, there was a pair of yoga pants in her bag that didn't have a receipt. And Brittany said, you know, one of the coworkers earlier in the day sold it to her, but that she must have thrown the receipt away. And Jayna said, well, I can't check the computers because they've already been shut down for the day, but we'll deal with this tomorrow. And they locked up and left. And when Jayna left the store, she called the coworker, and that girl said she did not sell Brittany any pants that day. And Jayna called Rachel, the general manager, to let her know, and Rachel told Jayna that she would take care of firing Brittany the next day. So the detectives and really everyone involved with the case are pretty much convinced that Brittany is the sole perpetrator. But they also don't want to just confront her with it because, one, she's black.
Right.
And she's been portrayed as a victim this whole time. And they're like, if we mess this up and she is not the bad guy, that's going to look real bad.
Yeah.
But, like, also, you know, if she did do it, but they didn't have quite enough to, like, charge her or convict her with it, then she could run away, you know? And so there were, the higher-ups in the department were, like, just confront her with the evidence, you know, just tell her, you know, that she did it. And Detective Drury was still kind of like, I don't know that she did it, you know, like he was coming around, but he was like, man, I don't want to accuse this little girl of doing this.
Right.
And so they call her back in with like pressure from like their bosses telling them, you need to just take care of this, you know? And they're hoping that she'll confess. If they finally, like, tell her, hey, like, we know you're not telling us the truth.
What's going on?
Like, did you guys get in a fight? Like, did Jayna attack you? Was there some kind of altercation? You know, what happened? You know, we know that you're not telling us the truth.
Right.
And
we know that something happened.
Like, thought, like, maybe if we give her an opening, she'll start confessing. But she just digs in. She swears, I did not do this. These two guys came in. They did it. They're the bad guys. Find them. So her brother and her sister had come into the station with her, and they decide on another tactic. They bring Chris and I think her name was Marissa in this brother and sister, and they say, we think your sister did it. And this is why we think your sister did it. And her sister, like, breaks down. And they have to take her out of the room.
Yeah.
She's just crying. She's like, there's no possible way that this is my little sister. My little sister couldn't have done this.
I mean, that would be hard.
Right. So her brother is like, did you do this? And she's like, no, I swear I didn't do it. And she won't say anything. And so they say, or Chris asks, can I talk to her for a minute? And so the detectives leave. And there's recording devices in there because it's an interrogation room. But they're not obvious. They're hidden. Mm-hmm. And so Chris is like, there are no recording devices in this room. I looked. I can't find any. There's none in here. Tell me what happened. Meanwhile, the cops are down the hall watching it happen. Yeah. And she's just like, I didn't do it. And he was like, did she accuse you of stealing? And she was like, she accused me of stealing, but I swear I wasn't stealing. I swear I didn't do it. I didn't have anything in my bag, And he's like, tell me what happened. And she's like, I'm not going to talk to you here. I'll talk to you at home. Just take me home. And he's like, I don't think they're going to let you go home. Mm-hmm. And she was like, I don't want to disappoint the family. I don't want to ruin our family and all this stuff. And like the district attorney is like down the hall with the cops watching this going like, she's basically confessing. Yeah. Like, she's not saying it, but like she did it. Mm-hmm. And so they finally arrest her. They charge her with first-degree murder. It throws everybody because like the whole community has been terrified of these masked men running around. People don't want to work late at night. They don't want to work alone. They don't, they're terrified. And like who?
And it turns out to be this teeny tiny girl.
Right. Like who would go in and like savagely attack these girls, And then they find out that this girl that they like fully embraced as a victim is the bad guy. Mm-hmm. And so, like it shocked everybody.
That would be wild to find out.
So the main obstacle that the prosecution had in the trial was proving motive. Because they weren't allowed to talk about Brittany shoplifting the night of the murder because it was considered hearsay. Because all they had was the general manager saying, Jayna called me and said she stole. Yeah. And they were like, it's classic hearsay. We can't use that. Mm-hmm. And so...
Which is always unfortunate in a case like that where you kind of need to prove something that that kind of thing would prove.
Because why would this girl kill this other girl? Right. Like, it just seemed so silly. Especially, like, with no other context. Right. And so, the defense's thing was, like, fully admitting Brittany did this. Mm-hmm. They went in saying, she did it. Yeah. But they were claiming it wasn't first-degree murder.
Oh, okay.
Because first-degree murder, you have to have some planning. You know, this was a crime of passion. There was no forethought. It happened. They got in a fight. And to prove it, that's why she used the weapons that she used. Because she wasn't planning it. She just used whatever was available at the store.
Over and over and over.
Yeah. They had an ugly fight, and this, like, was unfortunately the outcome, is what their thing was. So after, I read two different things, either 6 days of trial or 8 days of trial. The jury left to deliberate. The charges they had to decide on were first-degree murder and second-degree intent to kill. One juror said that he had been, like, really trying to give Brittany the benefit of the doubt. He was like, the justice system isn't always fair. You know, like, I really want to, like, hear her out and see, you know, what happened. And, you know, he even was like, after hearing, like, the details of, like, the 331 injuries that Jayna...
The definite overkill.
That it was just part of the fight. She was out of her mind. You know, it just was part of the fight. This has just happened. He said...
But for no reason we're allowed to speak about.
Right. But he said, but the fact that Brittany stopped her attack to go into the break room and retrieve the knife that was from the sink in a completely different room and then go back and continue her attack. He was just like, that was enough to convince him that she had enough cognition to know what she was doing. She could have stopped
Yeah.
She could have, like, right then, she could have stopped
Between
what she was
any
doing.
tool, she could have stopped.
Yeah.
But she chose to continue.
Exactly. So they said that even without a motive, it took them less than an hour of deliberation, and they came back with guilty verdicts. And during sentencing, Brittany appealed for mercy, so she didn't talk during the actual trial.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even think that the defense called any witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
But during her sentencing, she appealed for mercy, stating, quote, "Your Honor, I understand I'll be severely punished for the crime I have been convicted of, and now I face a possible lifetime in prison. I also know there are many people who want for me to have a sentence without hope, but I'm asking you today to leave me with some. I don't even ask you this for myself. I truly ask you this for my family, that is especially my mom and dad." And everyone was just kind of grossed out that she said the crime I've been convicted of without actually even admitting to the crime, like,
not taking any accountability for it.
Yeah. And, like, you didn't give Jayna's family any hope. Like, you didn't give
You
her
gave their
any
daughter
hope.
a life sentence.
Right. And so the judge during sentencing, like, at the end, addressed Brittany, and it was a really long statement. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but he did say, quote, "With adrenaline coursing through your body, you mutilated this woman. And after every blow, you had a chance to think about what you were doing. The lies that you told afterward were incredible. You are one hell of a liar, ma'am."
Yeah.
And so he did sentence her to life without the possibility of parole. My goodness. And it's nap time. He sentenced her to life without the possibility of parole. And Brittany Norwood is currently incarcerated at the Maryland Division of Correction and will be for the, quote, balance of her natural life.
All right. I mean, she kind of deserves it.
Yeah, I'd say. And, like, the thing that always blows my mind is, like, it was for the stupidest reason.
Yeah.
Like,
getting fired from Lululemon, like, good gracious.
Yeah. And I guess, you know, she probably was worried, like, I'm going to lose this personal trainer job, and my goal in life is to be a personal trainer, and I don't want them to know that I'm a thief, and, you know, that they might not let me work there or whatever because of that. But, oh my God. That's worth killing somebody over.
Yeah.
Like,
because now you definitely have lost
right.
all of that.
Yeah.
Plus your freedom.
Exactly. And you made this girl lose her, like, possibility of ever having her dream job.
Right.
She'll never have her dream job. She'll never do anything else again for the rest of her life. Well, or forever. I mean, that was really bad wording. For eternity. She, but, like, that wasn't your decision. And it was over the stupidest thing. And the other thing I was thinking about was, if you have the personality where you genuinely think that you can outwit the police, you don't. You can't. If you really are sitting there thinking, I could get away with that, you can't. The people who think they're smarter than the police are not.
They're generally not.
They're not. And, like, to tell such a horrible story.
Yeah.
And make everybody feel so sorry for you that this poor girl was attacked and what a horrible ordeal she went through. And the whole time,
it was her.
It was her. And it's just, I don't know. That story always sticks with me.
Yeah, like, I knew about that story, but I didn't know, like, the details of the story.
And I know, like, every time we see a Lululemon store, I'm like, don't go in there. Which, by the way, Lululemon, don't sue me for that. I just know the story. But, you know, it's just, and I know Lululemon didn't have anything to do with it. It was
one crazy girl.
It was one crazy girl, and that just happened to be where they worked. But it's always mind-boggling, especially, like, just the brutality of it. And, like, I know, like I said, the judge had, like, a big whole long statement, but part of his statement was, like, you know, you wanted to be a personal trainer. The amount of, like, muscle and, like exertion that must have been to do all of that, like, is, like, horribly impressive.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that
You've
you have the stamina to do that. And he was even like, I banged my fist down on, the table 331 times. Like, I was exhausted after that.
Yeah.
So, that is a terrible story for you.
It's a pretty terrible story.
Yeah. Especially because, like, if you were the person first listening to it as it was happening, and you hear this girl telling this horrible story about the terrible things that happened to them, you would just be thinking, oh my God, like, you have to find these guys. And like, how terrible that she went through this, and she has to live with this, the knowing that her friend died and she didn't die and she was attacked, and always be scared for the rest of your life because you were attacked, and you never know if these guys are going to come find you or if they're going to attack somebody else.
You never have a sense of safety.
Yeah. And it was her the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyway, you got anything to add?
Not really. It's once again been a pretty mundane week.
Yeah.
Just naughty children and...
Always. It's the way it goes. Did I tell you about my car?
You told me that they found a bunch more damage underneath your bumper.
Yeah, so Faren got my car wrecked. Just kidding. Somebody rear-ended Faren while she was driving my car a couple of months ago. And I finally got it to the body shop. Well, like, the insurance adjuster looked at it and, like, wrote me a check for, like, the damage that he saw. And then I finally got it into the body shop yesterday, and they told me today that when they took the bumper off, they found more damage. So they're going to have to figure out.
Gonna have to adjust the adjustment.
Yeah. So that's fun. Who knows when or if that's ever going to get fixed.
Right.
At least I don't have to pay for it.
Yeah. At least it's not really your problem.
Yeah. It's just my problem that I'm driving somebody else's car.
Indefinitely.
I was just like... So Enterprise, when I went to get their rental car yesterday, they told me, well, if you use your insurance to, like, as the insurance for the car, which you can do, if anything happens to it, even if it's not your fault, we file the claim with your insurance and we collect your full deductible. And I was just like, even if it's not my fault, like, what if somebody rear ends me in this car? And then they're like, but Geico, because Geico's the insurance that is dealing with the adjustment, works with us, and they give us a discounted rate on, like, our daily rate for insurance, which covers it bumper to bumper no matter what happens to it. It only costs you, like, $13 a day. I'm like, I don't know how long I'm going to have this car.
I didn't choose to have a rental car.
Like, this guy should be paying $13 a day for my rental insurance.
He should have to pay for your rental insurance. He's the one that caused this situation to happen. Yeah.
So, right now, I'm just hoping nobody rear ends me in this car, because I don't want to pay $13 a day. They said I could go in at any time and add it, like, but still, like, I don't want to pay for that.
I mean, luckily, this isn't something that happens to us often, so...
Yeah.
You should be fine, but...
Yep. Well, I guess that is it. Those are the only things I had to say.
Yeah, I just have nothing to say. I've just been crocheting and...
Crossing some animals?
Not recently.
No.
My villagers are going to be so mad at me.
Yeah. I still got those 3 creatures I have to catch.
I have so many creatures I have to catch.
Well, I mean, I have a lot of creatures in the game I need to catch, but for the specific month that I'm on, I've got 3 creatures I need to catch, and they're, like, the most elusive creatures.
The most elusive creatures are those tree beetles.
Well, those are pretty bad, but I'm not there yet. I'm still, like, in May or something. And so I've got the big floppa. What is it called?
A Queen Alexandra's birdwing.
Yeah, butterfly thing. Yeah. And then I've got the barrel eye fish and the giant trevally. I have everything else for this month except those things.
Yeah, when I caught my barrel eye that I needed, I was just like, I'm going to catch a barrel eye. And I saw a small fish and I was like, there's my barrel eye. And it was.
Would you like for me to hand you my switch and then you do the exact same thing?
That will never happen again.
Yeah. Okay, well, remember that you can find us on social media at Twisted and Mysterious. or email us at twistedandmysteriousPodcast@gmail.com.
We would love to hear from you, whether it's just a comment on the podcast or you have a story idea or a listener tale of your own.
That's right. And it's about time that you guys started telling us stories. We've been telling you stories for like 18 weeks or something. That's a lot of weeks.
That's a lot of weeks, especially for us. So we would love to hear your stories.
That's right. Okay.
They don't have to be as dramatic as the stories that we tell, but, you know.
It's okay if they are.
It's okay if they are. But we would like to hear your paranormal experiences or your somehow being connected to some true crime thing.
Or you got abducted by an alien.
We want to hear it all.
Or you saw a UFO.
Yeah.
Or I don't know what else.
You were visited by the black-eyed children.
Ooh, yes. Putting ketchup on their apples.
Yes. You have a Slender Man experience. Werewolves.
Anything.
Whatever you got.
Yeah. All right.
Well, I think that's all we have for tonight.
Okay.
We'll be back next week and we'll see if I have a story.
Don't hold your breath.
Don't hold your breath, definitely. That would be ridiculous. But even if I do have a story, that would be a ridiculous amount of time to hold your breath.
Yeah, it would. Unless you just had it done like tomorrow. Right? That's still a long
We're not
time.
recording tomorrow.
We could, though. We could. If you were like, I've got it and I'm ready to go. And then I wouldn't have to, we wouldn't be doing this last minute like we always are.
Hey. Whatever works for us. We've always been last minute kind of people.
Everybody's sick of hearing us say that.
But, you know, it works for us for now.
For now.
Anyway, so we will see you guys next week, or we will speak at you guys next week. And remember that people are gross and don't get murdered.
All right. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.